When you're no longer the person everyone knew you to be, you can start to feel like even you don't know yourself. And that's a really lonely place to be. Welcome to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. I am so happy you're here. I want to dive in to a little bit about redefining yourself and becoming who you are after circumstances that changed somewhat of your identity. And I think we all go through that in different phases of our life where we move away or we change our group of friends or we get into a new industry or career that brings us different people to our lives and we stop feeling connected to certain people in our lives. And I think that happens a lot and maybe it's not talked enough about enough how lonely it can feel in that transition. Maybe when you're leveling up or just changing what no longer fits who you're becoming. I think that happens a lot and it should be praised and accepted because I don't really think it's that we lose sight of who we are when we change and or evolve. I think it's more of a necessary growth process that we all have to go through and we just do. And we just need to take it for what it is and accept that the constant is change. So, one of the biggest things that I want to kind of get into is that I did a lot of self reflection that everything changed. What now? That whole identity of being his wife and girlfriend had been taken away from me. And those were two truths that I had for so long. And then living in Utah was a part of that. And my career being a career woman, feeling like I had thrived in my career and my corporate title, and it was special to me, and people gave it praise in a way, and I worked so hard for it. And so it just made me seem like I had it kind of figured out. Okay, one thing I'll touch on that I know that people want to ask but don't is why my ex-husband and I didn't have children. And I'm not ready to share that whole story right now, but definitely, I think a lot of circumstances would have been different had that been a part of my identity. And I think when you hear my stories and realize I obviously do not know or understand what it would feel like to be a parent, but I know my experience is very different because I'm not. Because I think, and I've talked to my friends that are parents and that have been divorced, and they probably all agree they would have made some more questionable decisions during that process if they didn't have the grounding of being a parent during that process. So when you hear my stories, just know that without being a mother and having other people to worry about as far as that's concerned, it was a little bit easier for me to make more questionable decisions and just be on my own. I didn't have this routine of caring for someone else anymore. I had cared for and been such a rock for my ex-husband for so long. And I wanna say that for only I if someone honestly asked him, I know and he gave an honest answer, he would say that. So I don't wanna put words in his mouth and say that I'm his mother because it's not true. But I definitely played a very nurturing role in our relationship. And then once I no longer had that relationship to nurture and no children, it was just me, and I didn't really know how to nurture myself the way I needed to. I just know here I am on my own. I'm not any of these things that I once was. What do I do now? And so I really just had to figure out who I was again. And you have this whole blank canvas to mold ourselves into who we want to be. But we also have these limitations on ourselves. Like, I can't be this person. But then I was like, why not? I literally can be whatever I want to be. And although my parents told me that, and I had a very supportive upbringing, I'm very grateful for that, but I still think external things and other people's negative comments, even at a young age, I just knew that a lot of people, unfortunately, like to limit others because they're afraid to do the big things and change their own lives. So they would rather the people around them stay small and stay where they're at than support them or watch them grow and flourish. And I really don't think people always do this intentionally to hold people back, but it's kind of like that movie. I don't watch a lot of movies, but like Hillbilly Elegy, and I know there's psychology around it that the people around you just kind of want you to stay where they're at. They don't want to see you grow and prosper because they're like, "What are you, too good for us? Are you better than us? You're living this different dream. Like, who are you?" And I think the hard part is when you're an empathetic person and you feel other people's feelings, you don't ever want to appear like that you think, "Oh, I'm better than them," because you don't. So you kind of hold yourself back to allow them to feel more comfortable. And when I say it out loud, and I hope you feel the same, it feels like a crazy thing. It sounds crazy to think that someone feels uncomfortable that I'm growing, and instead of being excited for me, they're uncomfortable. So I think I should keep myself small. Like anyone that really loved you and cared about you would not think like that or shouldn't think like that. But yet, for some reason, we allow ourselves to stay small to keep other people comfortable. And it's really not a great cycle. So we have to be all right with going into that discomfort and just finding our purpose and not worrying about staying in the same place so that the people around us can feel comfortable because it doesn't make any sense. So I finally was all right with I want to do things that make me happy. I want to find my passion and purpose. And I will tell you, the more you really think about it, you reflect on when you were younger. What are the things you wanted to spend your time doing? And usually those are the same things that you have a love and passion for as you get older. Like the people that get really successful careers, the athletes or artists, whatever it may be, it's like something that started as a child that they were really passionate about, that they loved to do. And then they just continued to work on it because they loved it so much. And I think a lot of times as children, we have these passions, but then society doesn't always allow that to feel like the right path or the one that gets the most praise because it's not the norm. And it's so hence why instead of pursuing my dreams when I was younger, I decided to the safe bet and work in corporate America. And I'm all right with that now because it is what it is. And I think sometimes we have to make those safe decisions to realize we can do those things and we can learn from those experiences and be very grateful for all the learnings and the experiences that I had, the teams, everything that corporate America gave me, I'm thankful for. But it didn't ignite my soul. The only piece of it that I loved so much was really the leadership aspect. Helping other people on my team, my leaders, and being a team and getting things accomplished. We believe in each other, we're supportive. That piece of it, I loved. But all of the other stuff, Excel spreadsheets, meh. It was just like going through the motions, getting the job done. Because I'm competitive, I want to win. I want to see things get across the finish line. I want projects complete, all of that. But at the end of the day, what really fueled my soul was just human connection, and it always had. So I'll tell a little story when I think back once I was reflecting on what's my purpose, what do I do with myself? Because I know it's not climbing the corporate ladder anymore, and now I'm not a wife, and I'm not here in this rush to find someone else to be with because I didn't even know who I was. So how can I introduce myself to a person that I'm supposed to spend time with and have a relationship with if I don't even know who I am yet? I knew I couldn't come as someone that was ready to do all that. Outside of being in my soft girl era, crying over everything, being just a mess all the time, I also didn't even have my footing. I didn't know what direction I was going, who I was. So, how can I even present that to someone and say, this is what you're going to get? And I know we all change and evolve as time goes, but I was just in such a space where I really wanted to know who I am and be the best version of me before I tried to be a big part of someone else's life again, because I know all the work it takes. Like, relationships are really, really hard. And I was so reminded of all the hard things that you have to go through in a relationship that I just wasn't in a space to jump right in and do all those things with someone else again. It was like I needed a rest from that fight. Like a fighter, like I'd been in the ring 10 rounds. I need a break. I need to train again, and I'll get back in and I'll go to rounds with somebody else when I'm ready. But right now, it's like I'm not going to win that second fight after I just depleted all my energy for 10 rounds with someone else. It just wasn't going to be a win. And I want so badly to win the next time around because the idea of going through this process again and getting divorced again scares me. And I'm not even in a relationship. So, and I'm not judging because I know life happens, but I don't wish that on anyone and I don't want to do it again. So, back to finding my purpose, I really had to reflect on one thing that I thought about though was me back in seventh grade. And this is kind of a story some of my Utah friends might know. So I went to this middle school called Bingham Middle School, which is in Copperton, this old town by a copper mine, way far. And when we were in elementary, like in sixth grade, everyone was like, you're going to this school. And it's built in like the early 1900s and it was supposedly haunted. It was built on this Native American, yeah, it was just supposed to be haunted. So I go there in seventh grade. And that year, my seventh grade year, three wild and crazy things happened. One thing was someone that my friend's brother was friends with ends up hijacking a school bus and, like, shooting himself and running this bus into someone's house. It was, like, the weirdest thing. It was so tragic. It was so, like, I don't even know. And then a couple months later, 2 people that went to our school ended up passing away in a four-wheeling accident. And then a couple months later after that, one of our science teachers, I think it was, made a bomb threat to the school. And I remember we were all evacuated sitting out on the football field while the bomb squad went to see if there was really a bomb. But no, he just really had a mental health issue. So there was all these really weird things going on my 7th grade year. And this was a long time ago. So this was pre-social media. So you didn't like hear these kind of stories all the time. It was just such a weird 7th grade year. And I remember that I had wrote this poem because I always loved writing and I wanted to kind of connect through words. And so I would write songs, but I'd also write poetry. But I wrote this poem about grief and death and just trying to connect all the students in the school. Like, I didn't really even know anything about grief or death at the time, or not particularly. And I just took my words and put myself in places of people that I knew had grief. And then I remember dropping it off at the principal's office and wanting him to read it anonymously so that everyone could feel connected. And that's what my 7th grade self felt like doing. Her purpose was when I look back. And I'm not saying that my purpose was to just look write a poem and drop it off, but as I got older, I'm looking back at that, it was like my idea of purpose, I wanted to make people feel less alone. That's what made me happy, or that's what I was driven to wanna do. And I'm sure that most of my peers in 7th grade weren't like, "Oh my gosh, these weird tragedies are happening at our school. I better write a poem about it so we can all feel connected and less alone. And then I'm gonna drop it off at the principal's office." Like, at the time, I'm like, "This is what I wanna do." But the adult me is looking back like, everyone wasn't doing that, Heather. It's not like there was 20 poems that were dropped off at the school to the principal's office after that incident. You were just weird, and I don't wanna say it weird, but that's what I wanted to do. So, once I started thinking about those moments of my childhood and the times in which I felt happiest, a lot of times it was me writing alone and me learning about other people and their stories, and being very empathetic and understanding and non-judgmental. Realizing that everyone has a different lens they're seeing the world, and we all have different trials, and everyone's just doing their best. And my dad was, like, the best at teaching me that. And honestly, my mother was too. I still remember a time she was just the most giving person. And that's when I realized I'm just so grateful for my parents. They were just really genuine, kind and genuine humans. Their first innate, what they felt like doing was just being kind and not judgmental. So I didn't see a lot of judgment growing up from my parents. So I didn't pass a lot of judgment because I wasn't what I was exposed to. But I don't think I really realized how lucky I was to have such an influence growing up until I started getting older and started realizing not everyone had those types of parents. Because you kinda saw it as when you were younger with your friends' parents, but you didn't give it much mind. But as you got older and you heard more people's stories and their experiences and their childhood, not at all saying mine was perfect, because no one's is, but you start realizing, wow, I'm really so lucky that my parents made their purpose to give a good life to me and my little sister, to do things with us, to spend time with us, to tell us they love us, to give us attention, to take us to do things that we wanna do. I remember, like, the first instrument I played was the accordion, and when I think about it, for whatever reason, I told my mom, I'm in a elementary, 3rd or 4th grade, I wanna play the accordion. And at this time, there's not really, like, Google, like, accordion lessons. So, I literally still to this day don't even know how she, like, somehow found with what the phone book, she finds this place where we can rent an accordion, because I think they were pretty expensive to buy one, and we were, like, probably, like, lower middle class. So she finds this place, rents accordions, and they have accordion lessons. Accordion lessons, mind you. And it's she just shows up and takes me across town so I can learn to play the accordion. I remember going there and trying to learn. It was such an interesting interest in instrument. I haven't picked it up in a long time, but those are the kind of things that I'm like, I'm so grateful that I looked at my mother and said, "I wanna play the accordion," and she figured out how to do that for me. And when you're young, you just have to leave it up to your parents to allow you to have some experiences because a lot's out of your control. And had I not had the support that my parents wanted me to experience things, I would have just never known. And not everyone had that. And I realized that as much love and light that my parents gave me, I think it is my purpose to share that with other people now, is to show people that maybe did or didn't get that kind of love and appreciation and attention from whomever raised them, that they if they did they matter. That and I wanna bring that truth that everyone's important. Everyone's here for an absolute reason. We all have a purpose and we're all figuring it out and no one knows what they're doing. And you should never feel alone because there's always somebody in some small way can understand what you're going through, even if it's not the exact same thing. And what I learned in meeting so many people throughout this messy time and just sharing my story or hearing theirs, even if it's not identical or exactly the same, the emotions, there's a lot of things that are very parallel. There's a lot of friends that I have now that were going through the same things, but in completely different ways. And same with Knoxville guy. Same things, completely different timeline and experience, but the same. And I think the human experience in that is just everyone is going to have different challenges at different times. They'll have lows and highs, hopefully more highs than lows, but we're all dealt different cards and we're all just playing this game of poker. And I think back to my grandpa, Kenny Rogers the gambler. We're camping in the mountains and I'm learning poker. And one key thing he taught me about the game is that you can win with any hand. You can win with any hand. But it's really all about your perspective about the cards that you're dealt. So if you look at that hand and go, there's no way I'm winning this game, you're right. There's no way. You're not playing to win. You've already given up. You don't have a chance. They can see it on your face. You feel it in your soul. You've just decided for yourself that your cards are useless and you're not going to win. But if you look at that same hand with a completely different perspective, like, you know what? Let's see what happens because I think I can make something out of this, then you're going to do it. You just will. And let me tell you, even if that not so great hand doesn't win you that first pot, then you go get your next hand with the same outlook. And I swear you'll continue to have more positive things come your way because that's your frequency. That's where you're at. You're willing to wait to win, even if you have to lose a couple of times. And that's kind of what I realized through this process. I may have lost in the sense that I got divorced. That's an L in a lot of people's eyes. And I could say it was one that I took, but it was a necessary loss for me to be where I am right now. And I don't want to change that. And so if we start going, okay, I lost, but what did it teach me? And where am I going to be next? What did it position me to do the next time differently? And even with that deck of cards in your hands, once you've seen enough cards and you've seen how the game is played, you start learning more, even after a loss. what you should do better the next time. This is how I play this game, and I make these adjustments of how I play my cards. Life is a lot like games of poker. You're not going to win every hand, but you should bet all in when you know that that's what you want. And you should fold on the hands that aren't for you. And if you lose, you will get back up. You will never be on the ground forever. The amount of times I cried on the kitchen floor and still got myself up, I can't imagine. I thought it was crazy. I was even down there. I thought that was what people only did in the movies. But I got back up and I made things work. And you will too. So, really, where I'm going here with this is that purpose is everything, and perspective is that other key piece. So, through this, finding my purpose, creating my identity, that's why I'm here with this podcast. I'm literally doing something that scares me, but it feels like the seventh grade me would want to say the things that I'm saying now to whomever will listen and wants to grow or connect with me. So, in all of this, do I know my purpose, but I still don't have this clear path to how I best get there. So, it's continually taking the hand I'm dealt and figuring out how I win with it. And I want you, if anything, to take from this is that sometimes the hardest challenges or the biggest losses in our lives are absolutely the things that allow us to be exactly where we need to be and closer to our purpose. I know I'm so close to my purpose, and I'm all right with just continuing to figure it out as I go along. And we should all give ourselves grace in that whole process of figuring it out as we go along. So hopefully next time I get, pocket aces, but if I don't, I'm going to play with, a 2-6 off suit and still see what I can do. Thank you so much for listening to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. Until next time, you matter.